The Replica Wife.
The gray, violent waves of the Pacific Ocean pounded against the cliffs of Big Sur, the sound serving as the only sign of life against the absolute silence inside the house. This structure, named the Monolith, was like a dagger plunged into the heart of nature, a soulless, architectural masterpiece composed entirely of concrete, steel, and floor-to-ceiling glass. Vivian stood before the colossal glass facade of the living room, facing the sea. Outside, the fog had clung to the surface of the glass, blurring the world into a gray haze. Vivian's reflection formed a ghostly silhouette against this misty backdrop. Underneath the silk robe she wore, her belly formed a perfect curve, marking the final month of her pregnancy. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. The baby was calm, just like this house, just like Vivian's life. Everything was flawless. Her husband, Julian, Silicon Valley's wonderkind, a shadow emperor, had granted her not just a life, but a kingdom. Vivian was a woman whose past had been erased, a phoenix risen from the ashes. Julian had found her 5 years ago in a crowded, soot-stained diner in New York, waiting tables. Back then, her name was Chloe. Tired, futureless, and invisible Chloe. Julian had extended his hand to her and said, "I will take you to where you belong." And he had. He gave her a new name, Vivian. He gave her a new style, a new walk, a new tone of voice. Chloe died, and Vivian was born. The interior of the house was a projection of Julian's mind, minimalist, sterile, error-free. There was not a single speck of dust, not a single magazine out of place. Vivian was the most valuable piece in this tableau. She was less a wife and more a living, breathing work of art, curated by Julian. However, in recent weeks, a low hum resonating from the home's foundation had been feeding a restlessness inside her. It wasn't just the sound of the wind. It was the moan of a truth hiding behind the glass.
Julian's arrival home was a ritual. When his black electric car appeared in the driveway, the house's smart systems automatically shifted the lighting to evening mode. Vivian stood at the kitchen island, aerating Julian's favorite wine. Her husband's entry was soundless. Julian didn't slam doors. He didn't raise his voice. He was a master not of chaos, but of control. Entering the living room, he approached Vivian. He pressed his cold lips against her forehead. It was less a kiss and more a validation of ownership. "How are you today, Viv?" he asked. His voice was a smooth bass tone, like something from a high-end sound system. "I'm fine," Vivian said. Just 2 words. Julian didn't like long sentences. Dinner was eaten in silence. There was only the sound of silverware against porcelain and the muffled roar of the ocean in the distance. Vivian studied her husband's face. Sharp lines, ice-blue eyes, a mind always calculating. Julian wasn't looking at her. He was focused on the geometry of the grilled salmon on his plate. In that moment, Vivian felt like an aquarium fish, fed, protected, exotic, but never allowed to touch the ocean. Julian's love for her was no different from the love he held for a rare painting in his collection. The painting was valuable as long as it stayed in place and its colors didn't fade. That night, when Julian retreated to his study, Vivian lay awake in the master bedroom. the indefinable void inside her, pressed against her chest, heavier than the baby in her womb. The next day, due to a storm warning from the ocean, all the automatic shutters of the house were temporarily locked down. A minor glitch in the system left the door to the main server room, Julian's sanctum, ajar. This was the brain of the house, a windowless room filled with the hum of cooling fans and illuminated by blue LED lights. Vivian normally didn't go in there. It wasn't forbidden, but it wasn't necessary. But that day, she felt a need to escape the stifling air of the house, perhaps to lose herself in that sterile blueness. She stepped inside. The hard drives lined up on the shelves were the backups of Julian's digital empire. On the desk, however, sat something contrary to Julian's meticulousness, an open, old-fashioned, leather-bound notebook, and next to it, an analog camera. Vivian approached the notebook. A single letter was embossed in gold leaf on the cover, V.
Thinking it was a journal, she picked it up. But as she turned the pages, she felt the blood drain from her veins. The dates. The dates were wrong. The first page dated back 10 years. Vivian, that is, Chloe, had only been married to Julian for 5 years. She flipped through the pages rapidly. The handwriting was Julian's. Notes, observations, critiques. Trial V failed. Can't get the hair color right. Voice is too shrill. Date, 8 years ago. V is too emotional. Not suitable for the project. Liquidated. Date, 7 years ago. New candidate, Chloe. High potential. Bone structure 98% compatible, malleable. Date, 5 years ago. Vivian couldn't breathe. On the very last page of the notebook was a transparent sleeve. The photograph unraveled the knots in Vivian's knees. There was a woman in the photo. It was her. No. Looking closer, she realized. The woman in the photo was dressed exactly like Vivian, had the same hairstyle, but the eyes were different. And beneath the photo was a date of death. 1 year before Julian and Chloe had even met. The woman's name, Vivian Sterling. The real Vivian. The first Vivian. The original. Chloe, the current counterfeit Vivian, collapsed where she stood. She was not the woman Julian had fallen in love with. She was a project Julian had picked off the street and trained to fill the void of his dead wife, transformed into a dead woman through plastic surgery, diets, and voice coaching. Julian hadn't mourned his dead wife. He had cloned her. In that instant, every memory of her past was rewritten in her mind. The clothes Julian bought her, this color suits you so well. The way he had her cut her hair, it's more noble gathered at the nape. Even the adjustments to her smile, show less teeth, be more mysterious. It was all to make her resemble the dead woman in this photograph.
She looked at her belly, at the baby. "And what about you?" she whispered to the darkness. "Whose sequel are you?" Under the blue light of the room, Vivian looked at her own hands. They were the hands of a stranger. Her nails were manicured the way the dead Vivian liked. Her skin wore the dead Vivian's perfume. She didn't exist. She never had. She was merely a ghost inside an expensive costume. When the storm broke that evening, the glass walls trembled. Rain descended upon the house like bullets. Julian came home early.
He wanted to check the generators in case the storm cut the power. He paused when he entered the living room. Vivian was sitting in the iconic leather armchair facing the fireplace, but she wasn't wearing her usual elegant gowns. She wore a black t-shirt taken from Julian's wardrobe, oversized on her, and a pair of old jeans. Her hair was tied up carelessly in a bun, a style Julian hated. There was no makeup on her face, and in her hand was that notebook. Julian took off his jacket and left it on the arm of the sofa. No fear or surprise appeared on his face, only the wariness of a software engineer who had found a bug in a complex string of code. "You weren't supposed to go in that room," Julian said. His voice was calm, dangerously calm. "Who is my name?" the woman asked. Her voice didn't tremble. Her eyes were as cold as the ocean. Julian sighed, heading to the bar to pour a glass of whiskey. "You are Vivian, my wife, the mother of my child." "No," the woman said. "Vivian died 10 years ago. The woman in that photo died. Who am I, Julian? Chloe? Or just subject 4?
Julian slammed the glass down on the table hard. For the first time, his mask cracked. "I gave you a life," he roared. His voice echoed off the glass walls. "I pulled you out of that miserable cafe, out of that cheap existence. I turned you into a queen. Instead of being an ordinary Chloe, you became a perfect Vivian. You should be grateful." The woman stood up. She threw the notebook she was holding into the fire, into the roaring flames at the fireplace. She watched the pages curl and burn. "You didn't love me," she said. "You loved the illusion you created. I was your mirror." But mirrors shatter, Julian. Julian took a step toward her. There was a threatening glint in his eyes. "Where will you go? The world outside this house will swallow you whole. You have no identity, no money. Without being Vivian Sterling, you are nothing." The woman reached for her neck. She unclasped the $1 million diamond necklace Julian had put on her. She squeezed it in her palm. The sharp edges of the diamonds cut her skin, but she felt no pain. "You're right," she said. "Without being Vivian Sterling, I am nothing. And being nothing is better than being your property." She threw the necklace at Julian's feet. The sound it made hitting the floor wasn't the clatter of jewelry, but the closing of an era. Then she turned her back. "You can't do this," Julian said, his voice sounding incredulously rather than commanding for the first time. "The birth is weeks away. That child is mine." The woman stopped at the door. She spoke without turning her head. "That child is mine, and they will not grow up in your kingdom of shadows." The woman didn't take one of the cars in the garage. Instead, she grabbed the keys to the gardener's old, rusty, off-road truck from the wall. Julian remained in the living room, paralyzed in shock. His perfect equation had been disrupted, and he didn't know how to fix this anomaly. The software had crashed. The woman got into the truck. The engine coughed to life. But before she left, there was one last thing she had to do. She noticed the gasoline canister in the back seat, spare fuel for the garden machinery. She got out of the car. The rain soaked her to the bone, but she was burning inside. She unscrewed the cap of the canister. She poured the gasoline onto the entrance of the house, right in front of that massive $1 million teak door. Then she took a single page that had drifted from the notebook Julian had thrown into the fireplace, a charred page with only the letter V remaining, and let the wind carry it to the threshold. The sound the flame made when it met the gasoline wasn't an explosion, but a giant sigh.
As the fire began to climb the cold, inaccessible wooden cladding of modern architecture, the woman got into the truck. She didn't look in the rearview mirror. Behind the glass, Julian watched the orange tongue of the flames illuminate the misty night. He didn't intervene. He just watched. Perhaps, deep down, he was contemplating the destruction of this flawed version and already designing the next Vivian, one who would be more obedient, more perfect. Or perhaps, for the first time, he was experiencing the terror of his creation slipping out of control. As the woman drove along the winding, treacherous roads of Big Sur, she didn't see the smoke rising behind her. Miles later, she stopped at the edge of a cliff. The rain had ceased. The Pacific roared below. The baby in her womb kicked, a strong, lively kick. The woman rolled down the window. She inhaled the salty ocean air deep into her lungs. She said to herself, "Chloe," as if testing the sound of it. "My name is Chloe." Then she smiled. This wasn't Vivian's practiced, elegant smile. It was a raw, wild, and genuine smile where her gums showed and the corners of her eyes crinkled. She shifted into gear and drove into the darkness, into the unknown. As the glass palace she left behind crackled in flames, she drove toward her own chaos, her own uncertainty, toward her own life. The glass had shattered, and what emerged from it was not the docile butterfly they expected, but the storm itself.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next story.